exploitation or abuse of any kind will not be tolerated in tonight's debate. Tonight's debate will follow this format. Candidates will make 2-minute opening statements in an order that was selected by random draw prior to the debate. We'll hear first from presidential candidates, followed by VP administration candidates, and lastly by VP programming candidates. We'll then move to questions that have been pre-submitted by students. There will be 3 questions for each position, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. We'll start with presidential candidates, followed by VP administration candidates, and again, lastly, by VP programming candidates. In the next segment, candidates will have the opportunity to ask another candidate for the same position a question. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask the question, followed by a 1-minute response. Finally, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. We'll hear first from the VP programming candidates, followed by Vice President administration candidates, and lastly by the presidential candidates. Candidates, when I raise my hand, you have 10 seconds left to conclude your statement. Let's turn now to opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we'll hear first from presidential candidates, kicking things off with Sami Islam. Sami?
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening, everybody. As Mark has introduced me, my name is Sami Islam, and I'm running to be your next RRRA president. To give everyone a sense of why I'm running for president, I wanted to share my path here on Res. 3 days after I turned 18, I left Toronto and I moved to Ottawa. 4 days later, I fully believed that I was going to be kicked out of campus. Obviously, that wasn't the case because here I am today, but at the time I was pretty nervous and I thought it was a really big deal. In a meeting, I had to discuss next steps for how I could bounce back from my mistake and learn. And someone suggested that I get involved on RRRA Council. So I thought, why the heck not? And I went for it. To make a long story pretty short, RRRA Council wasn't really for me. I didn't really enjoy my time on it, but I did stick it out for the year just to make sure that I kind of followed through on the promise that I set. And I mentioned this to you guys not to share any frustrations or crap on prior executive. Rather, I want to highlight my experience. I'm the only presidential candidate to have served on RRRA Council, the oversight of which is an essential component of this job. Left feeling unfulfilled by my experience on RRRA Council, I looked for new ways to make an impact. That's when I found the Residence Fellow job. It sounded really small, but I spent a lot of time last year hanging out with my students and just playing video games. These were actually some of my fondest memories from that job. And it's how I got to know more about them and have some really important and critical conversations about a lot of different issues. These students had shared with me that they felt left out of the residence experience and the typical programming because the interests and the diversity of the programming was a little bit narrow. And these memories are sort of what prompted me to include the Game and Learn idea on my platform. At its core, it's just a community playing video games and having conversations. Some students might win prizes, and some students might make new friends. But when you look at it from a policy standpoint, it's an opportunity to engage some of the most marginalized students on our campus. That's what I bring to you as RRRA president, the perspective and a consistent recognition of the issues facing students. On Monday and on Tuesday, use your platform to vote and to advance RRRA. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Sami. We'll move now to Makayla Bowman. Makayla?
Thanks, Mark. Hello, Ravens. My name is Makayla Bowman, and I'm running to be your next RRRA president. I'm currently in my 4th year of sociology, minoring in women's studies. I've been both a first year on residence and a residence fellow, which has allowed me to identify gaps in the residence community and has given me the opportunity to be a part of important conversations regarding residence students. I spend my summers facilitating social justice and leadership programming and volunteering at places like Kids Ability and Variety Village Toronto, where I work with youth with disabilities. These experiences have allowed me to understand the need to prioritize accessible, holistic programming throughout my interactions. In addition to this, I have experience and knowledge regarding both residents prior to COVID and during the pandemic that will aid in the decisions I make to best serve you. I not only want to create a memorable experience for resident students, but I want to bring the voices forward that have continuously been left out of the conversation. I've spent 2 years using my position as a residence fellow to push the housing department to improve residents. And in that time, I've been able to engage in important conversations, such as the need for naloxone kits on campus across residence buildings. And that is coming to fruition this summer. I want to be your RRA president because I want to be able to bring more changes you want to see, and I want your voices to be at the center of these conversations. My team and I are working under three main pillars: resource and advocacy, networking and opportunity, and sustainability. It is through these that we will renew RRA and create memories. Ravens, it's time for a refresh. Make sure on March 22nd and 23rd, you vote Renew.
Thank you, Makayla. And we'll turn now to Greg Dance. Greg.
Thank you, Mark. Ravens, my name is Greg Dance, and I'm running to be the very first independent president of the Rideau River Residents Association. I have tons of relevant experience in student politics. I'm a counselor on the Carleton Academic Student Government, which is the organization that worked to bring you compassionate grading this year. I was also a department rep in the Science Society, where I led the charge at SciSoc and CUSA meetings to get rid of unfair ancillary fees. And it was I who was directly responsible for the fund key removal referendum that will now save students money off of their tuition. My platform revolves around resident student mental health, RRRA reform, and interorganizational collaboration. If elected, I will get RFs trained in mental health first aid. I will create proper naloxone education and safe substance use programming for residents, and I will work with other student groups for residents targeted mental health programming. I will put forward electoral reform in RRRA, which will involve permanently banning slates from the elections, making ballots permanently online, and banning campaigning in the tunnels. I will also ensure that RRRA collaborates more with student groups that run existing programming, like Panda Game and Frosh. Students have shown that they want these changes, and I'm the candidate with a proven track record to make real change happen. On March 22nd and 23rd, vote Greg Dance to be the first independent RRRA president.
Thank you, Greg. We'll turn now to our Vice President Administration candidates. Kicking things off for us here is Julian Espiritu.
Good evening, everyone. This past year has shown me some of the darkest times amidst this pandemic, as it has for millions of others across the world, in addition to my fellow resident students. However, upon arriving at Carleton, even being unsure about moving 5 hours away from home during a pandemic, I've experienced light like no other through this valuable community, and it deserves to be reciprocated. I've seen that residing here for many students has changed their lives, because living on residence is an experience that molds identities, where you create relationships to last forever and memories to carry on wherever you go past your time here. However, there's still room for improvement, and that is why I'm here today running as your next Vice President of Administration. As VPA, I will make these issues known and strive to take care of our campus, both from the outside physically by making our school more sustainable and affordable, and also by taking care of the people within it by focusing on mental health and inclusivity. Especially since the last year, a renewed focus has been shed on the topic of mental health, and I plan to focus on expanding mental health counseling options on campus, in addition to introducing campaigns to raise awareness and stop the stigma against mental health, which is oftentimes ignored. From the outside, I will strive to use RRA's resources to create opportunities for our students to change their lives in a sustainable way, creating an impact for years to come. I also aim to change students' lives from the inside by focusing on their well-being and diminishing stresses and struggles to obtain health essentials. Carleton's community is made up of a diverse population, and I will strive to make campus truly home, cater to a focus on our POC and international students who may feel out of place in a place that is supposed to be their home. As VPA, it is essential to push our students forward to reach their full potential, and I will do this by establishing leadership roles within the community to help support them even after leaving campus. Our students are the foundation of this association, and there would be no RRRA to run without them. There would be no school to run without them. This is why we must dig deeper and look after one another and raise them up, which is my top priority should I, Julian Espiritu, get voted in as VPA on March 22nd and 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Sama Russell.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sama, and I'm a first-year international business student here at Carleton. I would definitely say that we've all had a very unique first-year experience, or the first years have, being a part of a fully online academic year. So unique that you can get up for a class a minute before it starts, or even 30 if you're super speedy. But I, along with the rest of the first years, I'm sure, have been trying to make the best of it despite all the circumstances. I have a lot of experience working in leadership positions. I have worked as a summer camp counselor in the past, and this year I got to represent the interests of many first-year students in my program, as I was the first-year representative for international business. Moving forward, I want to be your next VPA. I will use my experience as a first-year student to bring forward issues that I am truly passionate about and that need to be dealt with. In order to provide more advocacy and resources for the first-year students and residents, I want to provide everyone with a Ravens resource kit. These kits will include on and off campus resources in relation to mental or sexual health, safety alarm keychains for a better sense of security when walking around campus, especially during the night, and more. Secondly, due to the lack of social interactions, presenting students with networking and opportunities is vital. By making RRRA more known to students, we can help create a successful and supportive year. Lastly, as a generation where sustainability is crucial for our future, I want to work with the Greta Thunberg of Carleton to create a more sustainable residence experience. These reasons, along with the rest of my team's points, are reasons why you need to vote Renew in this year's RRRA election for a memorable residence experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. We'll move next to Mira Gillis. Mira.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, Ravens. My name is Mira Gillis, and I'm running to be your Vice President of Administration of the Rideau River Residents Association with my slate Advance. Before I get into why I think you should elect me, I want you to get to know me first. Growing up in Windsor, Ontario, I always knew I wanted to create a positive impact in my community and for the people around me. This drive of mine led me to working with World Vision Canada on their No Child for Sale campaign as a national youth ambassador, as well as serving as both student senator and prime minister of my high school student council. I was also able to start up the Tampon Tuesday initiative, which donates feminine hygiene products to local women's shelters in Windsor, Essex County, which continues to occur on an annual basis despite the pandemic. When COVID-19 brought everything to a halt, I can genuinely say that it had a major impact on me, but I didn't let it stop me. I knew I fully wanted to immerse myself in the Carleton community, which is what led me to staying in residence and serving as a RRRA counselor. Through my time on the council this year, I've been able to see the tremendous impact it has had on resident students, which is what pushed me to run for Vice President Administration. I want to improve the organization by enforcing electoral reform to ensure independent candidacy remains an option in future elections, along with ranked voting for a representative vote. I promise to create focus groups resident students at large can voice their ideas and ways for RRRA to improve as a council. My team Advance and I will ensure monthly educational workshops are conducted with guest speakers to promote education beyond our courses. Most importantly, I want accessible, free feminine hygiene products to be available for resident students because these items aren't a luxury, they're a necessity. With that said, I truly want the best for resident students next year, which is why you should vote to advance RRRA on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. And we'll move to our last VP Administration candidate, Davin Cronin.
Thanks, Mark. Shoot, it's dark in here. All right. So hi, Carleton. My name's Davin Caratow, first-year Papin student. I come from Milton, Ontario, and I'm running to be your next VPA. Now, I'm running because while I've lived in res this year, I've gotten a chance to listen to what students are saying, and it's pretty clear what they want. There's a great desire to be heard, a great desire to be a part of this res community, a great desire for our student governments to improve and to work for students. This isn't a year anyone's really happy with, and students want change. The time for listening must give way to a time of action. This is a turning point to change RRRA and the residents community for the better. I hope to be the candidate to usher in that change. Now, I'm no stranger to this kind of job, right? In high school, I was elected student body president, where I wasn't afraid to take on the school administration and advocate for student needs. I was a trustee of the school board, where I came up with policy solutions to improve the lives of over 10,000 high school students in menstrual health and public transportation and electoral reform. I want to do the very same for residents, and I've already begun. As Lennox and Addington building rep and chair of the policy committee, I've become an expert on RRRA's inner workings. I've helped pass a lot of legislation, so I know how to make my promises into reality. If you look on my website, caratow.ca, you can see I have a detailed plan and budget to make your life in residence better. And what do I plan to do? Now, most important to me is ensuring honesty in RRRA. I want to see a transparent, accountable association, one that stands like the city on the hill as an example for what student government should look like. I speak for the students who want electoral reform, slate reform, who want to keep the executive honest, who want to see equitable governance. I will fight to revitalize our campus, to redouble our efforts to sustainability, to public and mental and menstrual health, to community building. And I will fight to make a RRRA that supports you with my $12,000 plan for thorough financial aid packages of scholarships and bursaries. I want to tell you all about this and more tonight, because if you join me, we can look towards a brighter future for RRRA, a student organization we can finally all be proud of. It starts with just one vote, one voice, and it's yours. I like to say I've got the experience and the plan to really change RRRA for the better. So what do you say? I want you to join me next Monday and Tuesday. I hope you vote for me, Davin Caratow, to be your first independent voice as your VPA.
Thank you, Devin.
Yeah.
We'll move now to our Vice President programming candidates, and the first candidate making an opening statement is Gielina Jung. Gielina.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, Ravens. My name is Gielina Jung, and I am running to be your next Vice President Programming alongside my team, Advance. I am currently serving on the Carleton Student Academic Government as a counselor, as well as plan to draw on my programming experience from volunteering for many organizations. But we're not here to talk about my experience. I'm here to prove to you why I am the best Vice President Programming candidate in this election. As a first year living on residence, my experience has inspired me to run for this position due to the pandemic. Myself and other first year students feel as though we missed out on a once in a lifetime experience, something that I will make sure students next year do not feel, no matter the circumstances. I also recognize my responsibilities as Vice President Programming and recognize that this position is not just about fun events. I stand by my team Advance's goals and will strive to bring equity and equality to RRRA, as well as events to educate students within residence to ensure the best and most healthy residence community and experience possible. Vote for me, Gielina Jung, and my team Advance on March 22nd and 23rd, and let's advance forward together, Ravens, because it's only up from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gielina. And our last opening statement of the day, Bijoy Arora. Bijoy.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, Ravens. My name is Bijoy Arora, and I am running to be your next RRRA Vice President of Programming. I'm currently in my second year of criminology with a concentration in sociology. Throughout my 2 years on campus, I've been a first-year resident, a RRRA counselor, and currently I'm a residence fellow. During my first year, I was able to experience a so-called regular first year, as well as the initial period of the pandemic when it hit. I was able to experience the adjustments and the transition. In my second year, my experience, I was able to become a residence fellow, and I nurtured my leadership and event planning abilities. This position allowed me to have conversations with first years about what they need and what changes they need to see in residence. Along with these experiences, I am also a small business owner of the Creative Hub Aurora, a clothing brand as well as a record label, which has given me experience in marketing and event planning during the pandemic, which is extremely important with the uncertainty of next year. I'm running for VPP because I not only want to make residence fun, I want to make it an experience that gives students skills, resources, safe spaces, an enjoyable experience, and a sense of community where all voices are more than just heard, they're respected. By creating spaces for BIPOC students and other marginalized groups to connect and developing a creative hub for creatives and entrepreneurs to develop skills through workshops and networking opportunities with professionals we can bring on board, students will truly gain for residence and be able to exceed not only inside the classroom, but outside of it as well. Me and my team want to create a residence experience that is supportive, engaging, innovative, and fun. That's why you should vote Renew on March 22nd and 23rd. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Bijoy. That concludes our opening statements. We'll now move on to questions that were submitted by resident students on the elections website. Each position will be asked 3 questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Candidates will answer in reverse order from that of the opening statements. We'll start things off with our presidential candidates, and your first question is this. In a year where so many social avenues were cut off because of the pandemic, students increasingly need strong mental health support. What will you do to make sure students have the resources they need in residence to maintain good mental health? And we'll go first to Greg Dance.
Thank you, Mark. So as I've already discussed earlier, I have a lot of plans for mental health. It's one of the pillars of my campaign. One of the main things I want to do is to get RFs trained in mental health first aid. Currently, residence fellows are trained in Safe Talk, which is emergency suicide prevention, but that's not enough to deal with the full scope of the issues that students on residence face. If I get RFs trained in mental health first aid, they'll be more prepared to deal with all of the issues that students face on residence. I also want to implement naloxone training for anyone that wants it on residence. Basically, in collaboration with other organizations and the university, any student on residence will be able to get proper naloxone training, which will help destigmatize the use of substances and make residence a safer place for all candidates. I also want to ensure that there's programming dedicated specifically to resident students to enhance their mental well-being and mental health. On March 22nd and 23rd, vote Greg Dance for Raw.
Thank you, Greg. And now we'll turn to Makayla.
So the lack of mental health resources is an Ontario-wide issue. There are many resources on campus, but they're just not made visible and in a central place. So that's the first thing I'm going to do through working with my VPA and bring forward those resource packages. We can put on and off campus resources for students to access, as well as I'm going to advocate and work alongside housing to see if we can fill in those gaps from an institutional standpoint. I just want to make essentially these resources accessible because they're already in existence. Thank you.
Thank you, Makayla. And now to Sammy.
Thank you, Mark. So one thing I've learned in my role as a residence fellow is there are a lot of unseen mental health issues that we need to deal with. And Safe Talk has been very useful to myself, and I'm sure other residence fellows that are running here can attest to that as well. And we've tried and we've spoken to try to get better mental health training for ourselves, but the reality is the housing department just won't give us that. It's too big of a liability for them to have that onus on us, and so instead we need to use our platforms in different ways. My VP programming, Giolina Zhang, she has a platform point dedicated to creating student resources being more available to students. She's going to host events that have mental health at their forefront to ensure students are able to access the resources that we already have, as Makayla has mentioned. Furthermore, naloxone training is already available for free by Carleton University. Instead, what my team and I want to do is make it mandatory for all RRRA counselors to get this training done to further destigmatize the use of substances. Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. We'll turn now to our second question, which is this. Before this year, RRRA had failed to pass its budget on time for 2 years in a row. As president, if elected, you'll be responsible for RRRA's financials. What will you do to ensure financial accountability? And we'll go in the same order. So Greg, you're kicking things off.
Hi, Mike. Sorry, you kept cut off for a second there. Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, for sure. The question is this. Before this year, RRRA had failed to pass its budget on time for 2 years in a row. As president, if elected, you'll be responsible for RRRA's financials. What will you do to ensure financial accountability?
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I plan on doing to ensure financial accountability in RRRA is to make sure that we get the pamphlets out to all res students advertising open positions on council. One of the main reasons that RRRA in the past hasn't been able to pass their budget is because there hasn't been enough councillors to meet a quorum to approve the budget. So if elected, not only will I do that, but I'm going to ensure that the budget gets passed in a timely manner within the first 1 or 2 meetings as the bylaws allow. If elected as an independent candidate, I'll work with whoever else I'm with to ensure that the budget gets passed and is equitable and puts more money into services that students actually use instead of programming that students honestly don't use that much. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Makayla?
Okay, so the budget this year broke even, which means RRRA did not make a profit, nor did they lose any money. With an uncertain year ahead, we don't know how many students are moving into residence. So what we are going to do as a team is reallocate some of our executive compensation to programs that matter to you. We don't want those to get left behind. In conjunction with this, we're going to showcase to students in accessible ways bi-monthly budget reports so that you can give feedback on where you think that money should be going if you don't think it is being spent in the right places. And that's why this March 22nd and 23rd, you should vote Renew.
Thank you. Sammy?
Thank you, Mark. So you mentioned that this year was the first in 2 years that the budget has been released on time. In addition to this, last year, the RRRA actually ran a deficit. And so as Makayla mentioned, this year they broke even, and technically we're still trying to suffer and compensate for the deficits from the first year. And in addition to this, what has taken place is obviously the pandemic, and efforts have been made to seek out grants and opportunities for funding for RRRA as an organization to keep the organization afloat. But what my team and I have committed to do, as we released earlier today, is to slash our team's executive benefits for the summer. This will save RRRA over $10,000 in student housing fees and stipends. The interest behind doing this is that it will free up space for us to implement some of our larger programming plans, such as the campus observation room. That's why on Monday, I want you to go to your CMail and use your vote to advance RRRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. We'll turn now to our third question, which is this. As president and the head of the executive, or excuse me, this year is the first time independent candidates can run in a RRRA election. As president and head of the executive, you may end up working with someone you don't agree with or you didn't run with. How will you make sure personal disagreements do not hurt the efficiency of the organization? Greg, you're starting off.
Thank you, Mark. So I have a lot of experience working with people that I don't always agree with. I have worked on CUSA Council, not as a counselor, but as a student, where I advocated for the removal of the fund key levy. To do that, I had to lobby many counselors, many of which have fundamental disagreements with me on the way student politics should be run. So I have a lot of experience working with other people, even if our ideas are different. If elected RRRA president, I will work with whoever I am with to make sure that RRRA is a better organization for the students that they represent. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Makayla?
Can you please repeat the question for me?
For sure. This year is the first time independent candidates can run in a RRRA election. As president and the head of the executive, you may end up working with someone you don't agree with. How will you make sure personal disagreements do not hurt the efficiency of the organization?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I've worked in lots of teams, both in my summer positions facilitating with youth, as well as in the residence community. For 2 years in a row, I've worked with 19 other residence fellows who all have different views on how to tackle issues at hand on residence. So in turn, this has allowed me to develop collaboration and communication skills and learn how to facilitate difficult conversations with people with opposing views. I will use this experience to navigate any challenges that come up within executive views if I'm working with folks who are not from my team. We have tangible plans based on aiding issues at large that affect the student body. So hopefully that's a collective, we all have a collective vision to better the residence community. So hopefully this will not be an issue, but when it is, I'm equipped to figure it out.
Thank you, Makayla. Sammy?
Thank you, Mark. So one experience that I really rely on, especially in this regard, is my experience as Vice President Academic of the Law Society. This year, we ran elections, and I actually did end up working with a lot of people that there were conflicts with because of the way the elections were structured, similar to RRRA. However, in this role, we've actually been able to move the Law Society forward and actually turn a profit in a year when this has never happened before. And despite the pandemic, the Law Society is moving along very nicely. Furthermore, as I look up and down at the other candidates in this election for the positions aside from mine, I recognize that there is an interest in every single candidate's position, including my team, to implement the policies that my team and I have come up with. So regardless of whoever I may end up with, it holds true that I think there are policy points that my team has come up with that would be useful, which is why I want you to use your vote to advance RRRA this Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. That concludes our questions for the presidential candidates, and we'll turn now to the vice president administration candidates. Your first question is this. RRRA has struggled with administration in the past. In 2019 and 2020, council committees weren't formed until mid-January, a responsibility of the vice president administration. If elected, what will you do to ensure RRRA Council runs smoothly and communication is strong between council and the executive? Our first question goes to Davin.
Thank you, Mark. Now, being a counselor this year, I really know the ins and outs of council and what makes it work and what makes it not work. For instance, RRRA has a pretty terrible quorum system, and it's a mistake that's been handed down through the years. Our quorum is 8 18 members, and we only have 24 councillors on RRA. Robert's Rules of Order and most expert parliamentarians say this is pretty terrible to conduct any meetings because it essentially means we need a 3/4 vote to get anything passed. I would scrap this kind of quorum, which is in essence a filibuster on RRA. Additionally, I would introduce some new policies that would change the context of council. I already proposed this as chair of the Constitution Policy Review Committee. I wanted to make the number of building representatives per building proportional to the population of the building, not the number of floors. This proposal was accepted by the majority of members of council, but again, failed because of our kind of terrible quorum system where 4 people can outvote the rest of the entire council. I think that's kind of a shame, and I want to change that. That's just the beginning of my ideas to clean up council, to increase more council engagement, and to essentially make RRA work for the students instead of, for something else.
Thank you, Devin. Mira, you're up next.
Thank you, Mark. So I also, as I previously stated, have experience on RRA as a counselor this year, which I'm very fortunate to have been elected. Something along the lines of this is that I got to experience this committee process firsthand. So what I do to ensure that everything happens on time and in an efficient manner is I would ensure that given that the responsibility of the Vice President of Administration is to conduct the elections of building and floor representatives, I would ensure this happens in a timely manner in the month of September. That way we could submit Google Forms to each of the councillors to ensure that we have enough councillors not only on the committees, but in general to fulfill the RRA Council. Given this, I believe that I have the most experience with all the Vice President Administration candidates present today, which is why I believe that on Monday and Tuesday, you should vote to advance RRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Sama, you're up.
Yeah, so right off the bat, what I would do is that I would introduce RRA to all the first-year students because personally speaking from experience, I actually didn't know what RRA was until about second semester. So I would hold hopefully information sessions so that right off the bat, students can get familiar with what RRA is and what it does and the fact that it is there to support them. That's one of my main platform points. Secondly, another one of my platform points involves the idea of having proportional floor reps based on each building. That being said, Glengarry, which has 11 floors compared to Russell, which has 4 floors. We would make it proportional to each building. So then each building can come with equal numbers to a table where we can discuss and have a more equal say for each building. And that's why you need to vote renew March 22nd and 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. Julian?
As I also served on RRA Council this year, I understand exactly what needs to be changed within the association in terms of communication, which begins with changing the system from something more accessible for all students. I would also ensure that council firms early on in the semester to fulfill the roles on RRA Council and spread awareness about the association and why students should get involved, as it is for the students, by the students, which we can increase engagement and allow more students to participate. And for the arrival of students in the fall, I would ensure that the population is accurately represented in council. And that is why I should be voted in as VPA on March 22nd and 23rd.
Thank you, Julian. We'll turn now to our second question, which is this. Many candidates in this election are promising to permanently allow independents in future elections or even ban slates entirely. As Vice President Administration, you will oversee the Chief Electoral Officer. Where do you stand on the issues of slates and independents and why? And we'll go in the same order, so Davin is kicking things off.
Thank you, Mark. As chair of the Constitution Policy Review Committee, I was proud to be the first one to suggest the idea that we should have independents in this election, and I pushed for it hard. I wanted independents to be a fixture of RRA elections from now here on until eternity, and then a lot of other people had different opinions, so we compromised with them to make this a one-year fix. However, I am committed to making independents permanent in RRA elections, and next year I want to open the discussion about getting rid of slates. I wouldn't do so without the complete approval of council, but I'm disappointed that this year we didn't get a chance to even have that discussion. So the next year, I'm definitely going to bring it up. I'm not a big fan of slates. When people ask me to join one, I refused. I believe in that students should stand as independent in elections such as this, so as not to distract from the policies and the issues at hand. Additionally, as regards to the Chief Electoral Officer, I want to have an independent hiring board to hire the CEO and DEOs to ensure that the one year's executives cannot meddle in the affairs of the next year's executive and the election. That's my plan to ensure electoral reform, and that's where I stand on this issue. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Devin. And we'll go to Mira now.
Thank you, Mark. So electoral reform is actually one of my main policy points in terms of this election. So I am very much for implementing permanent independent candidacy for future elections, as well as introducing ranked voting. That way we can ensure that we have a representative vote within RRRA. Given that I'm running with the slate, I do believe that students should have the option to choose whether they should run for independence or run in the slate. Given that I think slates promote teamwork and efficiency, although if you are running for independent, I also believe that you have the ability to work as a team, but choose to represent yourself. Given this decision, I think that everybody has the option to decide who they'd like to vote for. And that's why I'm so happy to have also been on the Constitution and Policy Review Committee and vote to include independence in the election this year. I also believe that on Monday and Tuesday, you should vote to advance RRRA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mira. Sama?
Personally, I believe that slates allow for collective visions and multiple ideas to be presented within the same goal. And so, for instance, me running with my team Renew, we all have very similar morals, and we are working together to collectively, hopefully, deliver a goal to better residents. More people are looking at ideas to make them stronger, and independents should be able to run as well. Saying that, my president is actually introducing a volunteer cap for campaign to allow for this equal playing field. And that is why on March 22nd, you should vote Renew. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sama. Julian?
Although the introduction of independent candidacy finally arrived this year, it is only due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While other Carleton student governments allow independent candidates on a regular basis, so should RRRA, as it is for the students and by the students, because we're all individuals with individual thoughts. Should I become elected, I will ensure that there will always be a place for students to run independently. Slate-only elections have proven to be less accessible and more disorganized for students, especially with the violation system applying to all members, which puts individual members at risk to fall of the mistakes of their teammates. Independent candidates with the passion and ability to run should not be punished for their lack of teammates. Should you believe in individuality the same way I do, be sure to vote in Julian Espiritu on March 22nd and 23rd as VPA.
Thank you, Julian. We'll turn now to our third question, which is this. Climate action and sustainability are issues that are incredibly important to many students. In this pandemic, with the CAF being takeout only, waste in residence has increased significantly. How will you work with your counterparts in dining services and housing and residence life services to encourage sustainable practices in residence? Devin?
Thank you, Mark. Now, I'm going to start simply with a small solution. A lot of buildings on campus don't have those fancy waste receptacles that some other ones do. Being here in Lenox, we got the garbage bin next to the recycling bin, the paper bin, and even a composting bin. But in Russell and Grenville, in Dundas and Stormont, they don't have either a recycling bin or a compost bin. I know Russell Grenville doesn't have either. We need to put these kind of recycling and compost bins in every floor in residence. A lot of residents don't even have the option to properly dispose of their waste. All the stuff we get from the CAF is compostable or recyclable, but a lot of it goes straight in the trash chute anyway. Additionally, Carleton's buildings here in residence aren't sustainable. Carleton is committed to ranking them all on the Green Globes kind of survey, but only Russell, Grenville, Lenox, and I believe it was Frontenac have actually been evaluated under this environmental standard. And all of them, they only barely got a passing grade, like about 3.5 out of 5. We need to have an environmental review of all buildings, and we need to put these composting bins on every floor and res. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Mira?
Could you repeat the question, please, Mark?
For sure. Climate action and sustainability are issues that are incredibly important to students. In the pandemic, with the CAF being takeout only, waste in residence has also increased significantly. How will you work with your counterparts in dining services and housing and residence life services to encourage sustainable practices?
Thank you for the question. So I really believe in cooperation and the importance of having these ties with housing and life services and dining services. One of my policy points is actually creating focus groups so we can hear from resident students at large. Given that we see that climate change and sustainability are at the forefront of ideas for students, I think it's important to hear from the students to see what they would like to see implemented in terms of sustainability with our cafeteria. I mean, I was part of the people that got to go from in-person dining to the takeout. So I really understand the part where we don't want to be using these plastic bags and we just want to move to a more sustainable future, which is why I believe on Monday and Tuesday, you should vote to advance RRRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Sama?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, I plan to work with the Greta Thunbergs of Carleton. And to go in specific details, I want to partner with Carleton's climate activists, such as Climate Action Carleton, in order to come up with ways to create a more sustainable residence, whether that being supplying reusable tote bags to take in the CAF with you, and pushing to work with Housing and Life residents so we can create a more sustainable residence experience. That being said, it may not, right off the bat, we might need to work towards it. Things might not change overnight. However, I am willing to push and work hard for a more sustainable residence life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. Julian?
So the future of dine-in within the CAF is questionable with the current pandemic. And the first thing I noticed when we switched from dine-in to takeout was the mass amounts of garbage piled up in my floor's disposal and also the outdoor cans. Many of these bags were still full of food. So sort and compost is easy to do so when you're dining in the CAF, but there should be an option to compost on our own floors, especially when there are already recycling bins to sort our other trash. This compost can be translated into contributing to a garden that I plan to establish in the residents' community exclusively, where we are able to build strong relationships with one another, contribute fresh produce to the CAF, and also promote healthy living. This residence garden will also offer an excellent educational opportunity for our students. And other than providing directly to the CAF, a residence community garden will also become a great way to give back to the Ottawa area through the possibilities of donating to low-income facilities and local food banks. Sustainability is one of my main goals, and if you agree with me, please vote me in, Julian Espiritu, as VPA on March 22nd, 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. That wraps up our questions for the Vice President Administration candidates. We'll turn now to Vice President Programming candidates. Your first question is this. Vice President Programming is a position uniquely impacted by COVID-19. What will you do to make sure events, programs, and residents in general is COVID safe, depending on the situation we find ourselves in the fall semester? And we'll go first to Bijoy.
Absolutely, Mark. So from this, I would draw from my experience as a business owner as well as an RF. As a business owner, I've had to run events via COVID and after COVID, and both of them been very successful. I have also, as an RF, had to run a lot of events via COVID. It's balancing, like finding a way to balance, I guess, both something with COVID and something without. All my events are also able to be in person and online. So depending on the restrictions, I am able to adjust. This does not take away from the fact that I am bringing to students opportunities to be educated and empowered. And that is why I feel you need to vote for Renew.
Thank you, Bijoy. Giolina?
Yes, my team Advance and I understand the unpredictability of COVID, and that's why I have introduced a COVID and non-COVID plan, a two-part plan that we will revise every single month for the events coming up. So part number one is COVID. We would have a plan for if restrictions were still in place, and we would have a plan for if restrictions were not in place. So therefore, if restrictions do lift up, somehow in the middle of the year, we would have events rolling out immediately for students. We don't want students to miss out on their experience. Also, this COVID and non-COVID plan prepares us for all circumstances for next year, whether restrictions are heavy or in the middle or very loose. My team Advance and I are ready for anything. And that is why you should vote for Advance on March 22nd and March 23rd, because we are the most prepared team for next year under any circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you, Giolina. We'll move now to our second question. Many resident students aren't aware of RRRA or don't know what the association does. As Vice President Programming, it's your responsibility to improve awareness of RRRA. What will you do to accomplish this goal? And we'll go in the same order. So Bijoy, you're up.
Absolutely. Again, there we go. I will draw on my experience with my business as well. It's taught me a lot about marketing from the 2 years of experience I have run it. At first, it was a lot difficult, but then as with the progress, you gain experience from it. And I think marketing only comes with experience. Also, all of my events are not just enjoyable, but they actually leave the students with something. I think that's what's going to really get the interest going. For example, attendance at my Creative Hub workshops leaves students with a greater knowledge of their creative abilities, as well as those that need to discover their new abilities. Attendance at my guidance from the field program allow for students to gain an understanding of what they can and can't do with their degree. I'm just going to give students possibilities. And that's what you can get with Vote Renew.
Thank you, Bijoy. Giolina?
All right, guys, can we just be blunt here? This is not about experience. This is about community. This is about building community. And that is what my VPA plans to do with her focus groups. We want to have focus groups every single month that are open to all students, and they can come here and tell us what they want. We want to make RRRA more accessible to all students. On top of that, I also want to implement student resource events. I want to make events every single month where students can come to us and we can come to them and we can show them RRRA and the resources that we provide. Again, this is not about experience, guys. This is about building a community. And that is why you should vote for Advance on March 22nd and March 23rd, because we are ready to work with you guys. We are not above you guys. We are on the same level, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Giolina. We'll move now to our third question. Residence is a diverse community with students from all around the country and the world, many of whom are living away from home for the first time. What will you do to ensure all students, especially those in marginalized communities, feel comfortable and welcome in residence? Bijoy?
Thank you, Mark. As a BIPOC student myself, I've experienced a lack of resources, events, and just things curtailed to my group of people. So what I plan to do is create BIPOC inclusive spaces. What I would do with these spaces is run workshops. I've already had a lot of conversations with advocacy groups. And what we would do is enable these groups to gain a lot more resources than was already available. I will also create inclusive spaces that could be through COVID safe social gatherings, as well as community-based events. And by doing so, I will enable BIPOC students to gain more resources, be empowered, and that is why you should vote for Renew. Thank you.
Thank you, Bijoy. Giolina?
Can you just repeat that question? Sorry, Mark.
Yep. Residence is a diverse community with students from all around the country and the world, many of whom are living away from home for the first time. What will you do to ensure all students, especially those in marginalized communities, feel comfortable and welcome in residence?
All right, guys, let's be honest here. Why do minority groups feel left out? Why do minority groups feel this way? It is because of a lack of education. And we plan to bring education within RRRA next year, not just for our council, but for students and all students. My VPA plans to have monthly educational events, and I plan to work alongside her, creating events that highlight and appreciate cultural differences. Along with that, we believe in safe spaces. And that is why my president has introduced a campus supervision room, which can act as a safe space for all students to go to if they need something. And that is why you need to vote for Advance on March 22nd and March 23rd, because we are here for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Giolina. That concludes this segment of our debate. Thank you to the resident students who submitted questions. We'll turn now to our inter-panel question segment. Each candidate will have the opportunity to choose any other candidate running for the same position and ask them a question. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask the question and then 1 minute to answer in response. The elections office has asked candidates to keep questions respectful. We'll start things off with the vice president programming candidates, and then we'll wind our way back to presidential candidates. And we're going in the same order. So Bijoy, you are starting things off.
Thank you, Mark. VPP has the ability to help students that need it the most. Students need resources, skills, and specific support for the communities they belong to. Why are you choosing to focus on a large gala that will almost definitely not be able to follow COVID guidelines, instead of creating innovative programs that support the residents' community?
Thank you. And I assume that's directed at Giolina.
Thank you, Mark. That is just not true at all, guys. Come on, look at our platform points. We have an equity committee. We have educational events. We have safe spaces. We are not choosing to just focus on vaguely. We are not choosing to just focus vaguely on the student population. We are choosing to focus. We have multiple platform points that are directed at many groups of students. And we are not just focusing on a large population of students. And that is why you need to vote for Advance on March 22nd and 23rd, because we are here for all students. No false promises here. We are focused. We have many platform points focused on many different issues for many different students. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianlina. And now I guess we get to flip the script. Gianlina, you'll be asking a question to Bijoy, so take it away.
Yeah, so there's been a big social movement lately about women, and 97% of women experience some sort of sexual harassment throughout their time. And us as president programmings, we plan events. And what do you choose to do? What are your plans to ensure safety, and what are your plans to kind of ameliorate those statistics within RRRA and within campus?
Thank you, Gianlina. Bijoy?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. So that's actually a really great question. My VPA has a lot of resources in her Ravens resource package to help that specific group of people, as well as my BIPOC inclusive spaces do not only include BIPOC students. I am doing every marginalized group I possibly can. So this is also to promote to speak with advocacy groups, which I've already done, specifically targeting women in order to give them resources, run workshops, again, create inclusive spaces through, again, social gatherings that are COVID safe, as well as community-based events. Thanks so much for your question, and remember to vote for you.
Thank you, Bijoy. We'll turn now to Vice President Administration candidates. Mira, you're the first candidate who has a chance to ask another candidate question, and I'd just like to remind candidates to indicate who you're asking the question to.
Thank you, Mark. My question is for Sama. Given that a motion regarding a proportional RRRA council was brought to and voted down at the most recent RRRA council meeting, do you think it's smart to reintroduce it as a campaign promise? Thank you.
Thanks, Mira. Sama?
Yeah, so I believe by doing this and making proportional building, having proportional building floor reps, it'll create a more inclusive community and an environment for resident students. I believe that having a Glengarry, again, a floor of 11 versus Russell, a floor of 4, having those two come to a table, it's a very uneven say as to what one building gets and to another. And by making it proportional, you can have a more equal say and more voices can be heard. That being said, also a lot of volunteer positions can open from this. Students can find more ways to get involved, and they don't have to take on as big of a role as they would maybe be presented with. And so this way it'll create a more inclusive and diverse environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. And it's now Davin's turn to ask a question.
Thank you, Mark. My question is from Mira. Your proposal to introduce focus groups is novel, but in my opinion, does not go nearly far enough. You posted on Instagram today, RRRA is elected by and for the students. The fact that students would have to apply to have their voices heard is a damn shame to me. Why unnecessarily restrict your feedback to first come, first serve? Under this plan, you would create an echo chamber and call it student engagement. I propose monthly executive town halls where execs can be held accountable by students in an open and public forum. You can't means test democracy, and you can't have transparency behind closed doors. Do you not agree that the executive should not have the ability to pick and choose which students to listen to?
Thank you, Davin. Mira?
Thank you for the question, Davin. So as I stated today, one of my main platform points is introducing focus groups. That way we can hear from the students, given that RRRA is elected and for the students. I understand where the concern may be from. However, we can't just randomly select students, given we want to ensure that people actually attend the events. We don't want to host events that unfortunately some people may not be able to attend. But what I'm doing here is, because it's a first come first serve basis, I'm not picking and selecting students at random or based on a bias. I'm doing it based on people who want to come forward and share their voice. And hopefully, given that we also are on RRRA and we have counselors from each floor, we have the ability to hear from other people as well. So that's why I think on Monday and Tuesday, you should vote to advance RRRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Our next question is going to be asked by Julian.
So my question is for Mira. On your platform, you indicated that you will be holding educational events to celebrate diversity. How are you going to ensure that the educational events that you have planned are going to be accurately diverse and inclusive in terms of planning and the content that you set out for the student body, especially when there are many more groups of individuals to celebrate and recognize beyond just each month of the school year?
Thank you. That was for Mira.
Thank you for the question. So yes, as Julian stated, I want to introduce monthly educational workshops and guest speakers. That way we can celebrate the diversity of students and also have it on a month-to-month basis, such as February is Black History Month and March is Women's History Month. Of course, there is not a specific month dedicated to each topic, so I want to hear from the students, which is why I'm introducing focus groups. I want to see what students are more curious to learn about, and I honestly just want to bring education outside of our courses so we can embody it as a whole. Obviously, I will hopefully be working with my team, Advance, to ensure that we are representing a diverse group of students and making sure that we are educating as many people as possible on a variety of different topics, which is why on Monday and Tuesday, I believe that you should vote to advance.
Thank you, Mira. And our final question for the VP administration section goes to Sama.
Davin, you are promising a lot to students. How do you think
Oh
you're
wait,
going
can you
to
hold
be
on a
able
second?
to...
My alarm clock's going off.
Sure.
My apologies, I was serious. It goes off every 12 hours.
All right, you ready? Davin, you're promising a lot to students. How do you think you're going to be able to follow through on all your promises, given the limited abilities of the role you are running for, the fact that you do not know who you will be working with on the exec, and the fact that the low budget of RRRA that you will need to be working within?
Thank you, Sama. Davin.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sam, for the question. And very clearly, I've told students today that I have the experience to get the job done. I know how to work with other people, and I've got a very comprehensive plan that I intend on executing to the fullest. My question back to you is, would you deny students that which I am promising them, even if it was difficult to push for some of these policy proposals, which I don't believe it is? What is the purpose of RRRA if not to advocate for what students need? Where would we be under the leadership of some unambitious executive who decides to quit before it's begun and decides not to fight for what students in res want and need? I plan on achieving these ideas like electoral reform, like free menstrual products, because I know students need them and I have the experience to get the job done. I'm a candidate, I like to say, who dares to dream and works to listen to students. I know we can do better as an organization. We can do more. Somebody's got to ask for something. Somebody's got to fight for something, or else all of us are going to end up with nothing. And I'd like to say that I'm the guy who can do the asking, who can do the fighting, to speak truth to power and get students a better deal. Students simply need that which I am promising. You may call the policies I fight for unattainable. You may think it's hard to negotiate with other people, but I have the experience to do so, and I plan on doing so. That's why you should vote for me next Monday and Tuesday.
Thank you, Davin. We'll turn now to our presidential candidates. The first candidate who gets to ask a question is Makayla.
Thank you, Mark. Greg, you made a promise to students to increase RF training with regards to mental health support. RFs already partake in mental health identification and intervention training and go through ongoing training on more specific topics like eating disorders. RFs are students too, without professional certifications, and that's why we direct crises to people who are trained to support them. Additionally, this is not something RRRA can implement, only advocate for. Why have you promised to put more responsibility on student staff to make up for the lack of institutional support?
Thank you, Makayla. Greg?
Thank you for the question, Makayla, because that's actually something that I wanted to elaborate on. RFs right now are trained to the Safe Talk level, which is emergency suicide prevention. So we'll give RFs the responsibility of preventing suicide, but we won't give them the resources to advocate for students that live with a variety of mental health disorders. My plan is to give RFs the training needed to understand and connect with students that have a variety of mental health disorders. Residents this year in COVID is isolating, and frankly, it's a pretty dangerous situation. I don't see how anyone could honestly campaign for less mental health training for RFs, especially during this pandemic. Thank you for the question, though.
Thank you, Greg. And now it's your turn to ask a question.
Thanks, Mark. So the reason I'm running as an independent in this race, despite all the inherent disadvantages, is because the student body showed during the last CUSA election that they want slates gone. In RRRA, slates have caused countless controversies. I want to direct my question particularly to Sammy, since he ran under the pro-slate Students First banner during the CUSA election and is again under a slate for RRRA. Sammy, the majority of voters showed you and your Students First team that they don't want slates to dominate campus elections by electing the team that would hold a referendum to remove them. Why hasn't your CUSA campaign experience changed your mindset on slates, and why aren't you campaigning on doing what the majority of students actually want?
Thank you, Greg. Sammy?
Thanks for your question, Greg. I must say it seems a little bit bold to make that extraction from one platform point from an entire team. I don't think it's necessarily follows logically to assume that the entire university or the majority of voters necessarily want slates gone. And the reason I actually returned to run on a slate, I almost didn't run actually because of my past affiliations. And after Gia and Mira told me about their great ideas, I didn't want that to be something that kind of bogged them down. But they really convinced me into running with them because they, for some reason, wanted me to be their president. And so on the back of that, I decided to run with them because I do believe the teamwork that we bring and the ideas that we have will allow us to run the most efficient RRA next year. We already have the ideas. We've already come to certain agreements, like the cutting the student benefits for the summer, which will save RRA $10,000. Those ideas are what makes teams effective. And that's why we're going to be able to hit the ground running and go right from the start. So on Monday, use your vote to advance RRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. And now you have the chance to ask a question.
So my question is to my friend Mick. Mick, you don't have any experience on RRA Council, and your VPA Sama kind of openly said that she didn't know what RRA was until about 2 months ago. How do you guys, well, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. Running RRA Council is an essential component of both of those profiles. So how do you guys collectively plan on running RRA effectively without that background experience?
Thank you, Sammy. Makayla?
Thank you for the question, Sammy. So as Sammy said, I have not been a RRA counselor, but I have had many friends who have been, and I've seen the way in which RRA works. I've done my research. I've read all of the Constitution. I understand the inside workings of it, as well as I've had friends who have been a part of it. In turn, this has allowed me to come up with innovative new ways coming from an outside perspective. So because I've not been directly involved, I can see different gaps than someone who would inside. So that allows me to work alongside Mira, who has this, or sorry, not Mira, Sama, who has the same perspectives as me, with as well as B Joy, who has been a RRA counselor. So it's bringing more ideas to the table and more perspectives. And that's why this March 22nd and 23rd, you should vote for Renew.
Thank you, Makayla. And with that, that concludes our interpanel question segment of the debate, and we'll now turn to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their statements. We'll start with the vice president programming candidates and work our way back to the presidential candidates. We'll start with Gialina. Gialina?
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Ravens, I could sit here and repeat all my platform points that we just talked about for the past hour, but I'm not going to do that. I am the best vice president programming candidate here. More experience or not, I have made it a mission to make RRA better in every aspect and on every level, starting with the top, RRA as a whole organization with my equity committee, to true accountability with my COVID and non-COVID plan. And most importantly, I can assure you that my team Advance and I are the most dedicated to the students. We've centered our entire platform on you, Ravens. We promise to make your experience at Carleton an unforgettable one in all aspects. Fun events, life-changing seminars, and educational resources, and most importantly, help you guys build the lifelong friendships and relationships you need to succeed. And that includes you, first years going into second years. We promise to give you at least a portion of your experience back. Again, we at Advance are here for all students. And I promise, vote for Advance on March 22nd and March 23rd, and we'll never stop to make students our utmost priority. Ravens, it's time to move forward together and advance with us, because it's only up from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gialina. Bijoy?
Thank you, Mark. I first off want to start my closing remarks by thanking the moderators of this debate. I would also like to thank the other esteemed candidate. Next, I would like to thank you, Ravens, giving us the opportunity to make rightful change. When I look at what RRA is today, I see potential. I see a system that, given the right guidance, can allow students to be empowered in themselves, engaged in their communities, and enabled to conquer more than just academia. The programs I've suggested do just that. With the creation of a safer and more inclusive spaces for BIPOC students, we allow students who are often overlooked to be given notice. We allow them to be given a voice as well. With the making of a creative hub and the use of professional creative mentorship, we allow for students to gain a knowledge that cannot be found solely through academics. Through my Guidance in the Field program, we will offer guidance to students who feel lost in the sea of career options. We will be your anchor. In our Sustainability Week, we'll promote practices that may appear to be small at first, but can make a great difference towards our planet. Ravens, if you were looking for a voice, then I'm that person. A person who advocates for those who are being silenced. A person who wants to enable students for future academic success. A person who wants to allow students to explore ventures outside of academics, and someone who just cares. I want to say that I hear your voices and will do what is in my power to work for you. As Ross once said, every day is a new opportunity to reach your goals. So Ravens, let's achieve them together.
Thank you, Bijoy. We'll turn now to our Vice President Administration candidates for closing statements. Julian, you'll start things off.
What I've learned during my past year has translated into my main focal points for this election: inclusivity, affordability, and fostering our community. This experience has come from many things, such as the diverse population that I've encountered at Carleton, the internal struggles that my peers and I have endured during this pandemic, and the uncertainty for the future. However, it no longer has to be that way. I truly care for and have a passion for positive change on residents, and that is what makes me the best candidate to become your next VPA. As VPA, I will ensure that all voices are heard and represented through RRRA, and that everybody is truly looked after for. By changing campus from the outside through a greener Carleton, by implementing initiatives such as a bike share program, which will not only reduce carbon footprint, but promote healthy living and community building, a residence community garden, and compost stations on every floor. We are able to then change it from the inside by hearing voices and returning equal communication to our students by bi-monthly newsletters of transparency and awareness, and by promoting sexual and reproductive health and destigmatizing mental health. We have to take care of our campus everywhere. RRRA is for the students, and they will always be the organization's top priority. This starts with giving students the keys to the success by providing opportunities to students and establishing an engagement committee to reach out to our residents. Our students are the foundation of this association, and there would be no RRRA to run without them. Once again, there would be no school without them. Looking after our campus from the inside and the outside is my top priority, and that is why you should vote in Julian Espiritu as Vice President of Administration on March 22nd and 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. We'll move now to Sama.
First off, I want to start off by thanking the viewers and the moderators. Mark, thank you. And to the voters, if you want to see effective and doable change on campus, you need to vote Renew. We are going to give you networking opportunities, effective sustainability plans for residents, and advocacy along with resources. Our team is prepared to deliver a successful residence with or without COVID. I am ready to be your next VPA, as I have many skills from my own experience as a first-year student and also my leadership skills in the past. I am willing to listen to your thoughts and suggestions, and I want to bring you the change that you want to see on residents. I am ready to make Carleton a truly safe, diverse, and welcoming community where each and every student has access to the resources they need to have in order to have the best experience possible. We want to make RRRA more accountable, sustainable, and inclusive, and we have plans to accomplish these goals that are both attainable and effective. Finally, to all the other candidates, it has been a pleasure campaigning alongside you, and I wish nothing but the best in your future endeavors. Ravens, make sure you vote Renew on Monday and Tuesday, because together we can create an empowering residence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. Mira.
Thank you, Mark. Ravens, thank you for tuning in and listening to the All Candidates debate tonight. You've been able to hear from each of us and of the values that we stand for. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I truly want the best for resident students, which is why I decided to run for Vice President of Administration alongside my team, Advance. Whether it be ensuring the student voice is heard through focus groups, having COVID and non-COVID plans so we're prepared no matter the circumstance, or even introducing a resident supervision room pilot project to promote responsible substance use. We want what's best for you, the students. My team and I are so committed to doing what's best for resident students at large that we've committed to forfeiting our summer benefits so we can put over $10,000 back into programming. I decided to run for RRRA because I wanted to be able to make a positive and meaningful impact on the Carleton residents community and its students. I'm so grateful to have my teammates, Sammy and Gialina, who share the same values and beliefs as me when it comes to making RRRA a more inclusive and accommodating organization for students of all backgrounds and communities. Now it's up to you. The decision is in your hands, and you have the power to use your voice and vote for who you believe will best serve you as your RRRA exec next year. Every vote counts, and you want people who want the best for you, which is why you should vote to advance RRRA on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you, Ravens.
Thank you, Mira. To finish up, our Vice President of Administration, Closing statements will go to Davin.
Sorry, I couldn't figure that out for a second. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to me today, everyone. Regards to my honorable opponents and you, Mark. I hope all Ravens will make an educated choice next Monday, because the vote you cast isn't about any one candidate. It's about the future of RRRA. Will RRRA stand as a pillar of integrity and student support, fighting for the issues that matter, or will RRRA fall into stagnation, crippled by leaders with a lack of vision and a deficit of ability? The choice is all yours. I can simply say that if you choose me, you can look forward to a long future where RRRA becomes the ideal for an honest and balanced student association, a RRRA that fosters grassroots advocacy and listens to its students in monthly town halls and a reorganized council, a RRRA that holds its executives accountable and makes sure its policies are equitable to peoples of all identities, with my idea for an equity officer. A RRRA prepared to make our campus as sustainable as the higher-ups like to brag. A RRRA that prioritizes students by cutting unnecessary spending like executive compensation. They get paid $25,000, all benefits full-toed, and reinvest in students with scholarships, bursaries, and a floor fund. I've got the plan. I'm the only candidate with a draft budget for both an open and a lockdown year. We can do this together. I haven't much else to say, because now it's up to you to make your decision. Remember, you aren't constrained by the slate system. You can declare your independence and vote for me as an independent VPA. I'm committed to serving only the people, no slates, no special interests. We can and should do better than we have in the past. We cannot uphold the same system, the same policies as we used to do every year, but neither should we move forward blindly. Our current executives made a good start in changing RRRA from the failures of the past, but the work is not yet done. I got a plan, I got the experience, but I haven't really gotten anything yet without the support of students like you. We can take up this task together. Join me, Carlton. Next Monday, vote Davin Karatau to be your VPA, and we can truly make RRRA better.
Thank you, Davin. That concludes our Vice President Administration closing statements. We'll turn now to our presidential closing statements. Sammy Eslam, you're kicking things off.
Thank you, Mark. So, if you stuck around this long, I imagine that you're interested in hearing about the nitty-gritty details of that me and my team have to bring forward to you guys to help RRRA operate more smoothly. I could talk to you about my experiences as on other academic societies like the Law Society or as captain of the MOOC team, but to be honest, they're not really as relevant. So I'm going to circle back to my experience here in residence. In addition to being on the Residence Oversight Budget Committee, I got to learn so much about what money the Residence Housing Department has and where the gaps that they're going to leave behind are. And I also have studied the RRRA budget for this year and past years extensively, so I know what we're working with. I know that, frankly, I'm the only presidential candidate that made plans with the budget very hard in mind. It's why we've got such big plans, such as the Residence Supervision Room, which is a safe space for students who are intoxicated to come and rest. But at Advance, in addition to having concrete plans, we're also realistic. With our budget considerations, I proposed to my team that starting this project as a pilot project would require a lot of free money, which is why the three of us have committed to forfeiting our student residence benefit over the summer, which will save RRRA over $10,000. When I spoke to this about Mira and Gia, when I proposed it to both of them, neither of them hesitated even for a moment. They were fully on board. And it's not something that we want to make permanent, because we understand that in normal years, sometimes it is important for RRRA executives to be around over the summer, but we do also anticipate that our summer is going to be spent planning virtually. By giving your vote to Advance, you'll know that you voted for a team that's got the interest of students as a priority. This role isn't just a job we're going for. We're here to create spaces that are welcoming and inclusive for all students, even if it means sacrificing a bit of our benefits for it. Next Monday, remember to open up your email and use your vote to advance RRRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Makayla?
Ravens, I want your voices to be heard. I know this year has been one of the toughest yet. First years have missed out on so many opportunities. I want you to have a memorable first year experience, learn and grow outside of the classroom, and feel supported throughout your entire time in residence. My team and I have plans to do this for you. I will bring you an equity committee entrenched in the Constitution, alongside electoral reform to ensure there's a more fair election process while not compromising the opportunity for students to be involved. We plan to mend relationships with partners on campus like housing in order to effectively address the issues that affect students most. We need to stop going head to head with a department that has more control and resources than RRRA. In doing so, we can ensure we are holding people accountable while working to get things done and fostering a space in which they act on our feedback. I have full confidence in Renew to lead RRA. I have the leadership experience, the knowledge of residents' issues, and the passion for making necessary changes. I want to use my experiences and knowledge of how residents works behind the scenes to prioritize the issues you care about most. My team wants your voices at the forefront of these conversations. Bejoy, Sam, and I want to hear your opinions. Reach out, ask questions, give feedback. Ravens, it's time for a refresh. Make sure on March 22nd and 23rd, you vote Renew.
Thank you, Makayla. And for the last statement of the night, Greg.
Thank you, Mark. Ravens, it's time for a real change in RRA. For too long, RRA has been the shady underbelly of Carleton student politics. Don't believe me? Check my Instagram post with a collage of RRA controversies over the past 10 years. Frankly, Carleton students are fed up to the point of apathy. Other organizations like CASHG and the Science Society have run with only independent candidates for years, and frankly have done much more than RRA for students with a much smaller budget. Resident students need a return on that high levy that they pay for RRA. They have not been getting it. Ravens, I ask you to read between the lines. Don't let fake populism manipulate you. It's time to break free from the machine that has held RRA captive for too long. My platform has solid promises to make a difference in resident student mental health, intensive organizational reform, and proper returns on students' money for events that will actually help them. I have the experience and the drive to make these much needed changes happen. My track record shows that I have relentlessly looked out for the needs of Carleton students in politics, not for myself and not for my slate. On March 22nd and 23rd, vote Greg Dance as the very first independent RRA president, and I will turn this organization around, not make false promises. Greg Dance for RRA president. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Greg. And with that, that concludes this year's All Candidates debate. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating and everyone who's tuned in. Campaigning will continue over the weekend and voting will take place Monday and Tuesday via your CMail account. Visit the official elections website at ra.ca/elections for more information on the election schedule. To learn more about each candidate, you can find our coverage of the election at charlatan.ca. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.